Hey guys, how's it going? It's been quite a while since I've made one of these types of videos, but I'm glad to be back. By these type of videos, I obviously mean videos where I respond to a bad YouTube video. And the reason why I haven't been making as many of these videos recently is honestly because it's been hard to find anything worth responding to. But luckily, while I was looking around last night, I found a hilarious video that I thought you guys would really enjoy, so what we're gonna do today is just go through that video. And in this video, the guy goes on to say that all Switch games run perfectly. And he goes on to say that the Switch 2 is more convenient than the Steam Deck, whatever that's supposed to mean. But I really don't want to waste too much time on the intro for today's video. Why don't we just go ahead and jump straight into this?
So I've been thinking about the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch 2, and how a lot of people on YouTube have been comparing the two, and I've been thinking about exactly if the Steam Deck can really match up to something as convenient like the Nintendo Switch 2. And honestly, I don't think so.
Oh boy, here we go. So apparently the Nintendo Switch 2 is just so much more convenient than the Steam Deck, despite the fact that the Steam Deck has a computer built in, and the Switch 2 can only play video games. Let's say you need to shoot an email and you have a Switch and you have a Steam Deck. Only the Steam Deck is going to be able to help you with that task. We're really off to a terrible start here, but let's go ahead and continue his video.
For about 80% of the time, I had almost a perfect experience with the Steam Deck, but even though I'm using SteamOS, sometimes I run into issues, like the redistributables installing randomly on startup.
Now this just seems insanely unfair to the Steam Deck, because how is this any different than having to do a small update on your Switch before launching a game? Plus, redistributables take like 3 seconds to download in most cases, so is it really that much of an inconvenience?
Or SteamOS just freezing up for some reason. Games consistently having either input delays or errors.
Ah yes, because games having input delay and errors are definitely something that are exclusive to the Steam Deck and absolutely would never happen on the Nintendo Switch. Also, if it's an input delay that's your problem, it's likely caused by a low frame rate because that just automatically adds more input delay. And with the Steam Deck, you can change settings to get a higher frame rate. On the Switch, you can't.
With the game just not responding at all to any inputs through Steam input. Proton versions needing to be sifted through and tested for specific titles with certain features not working, such as the sound, video, or sometimes even specific stages crashing on you, like with one of my favorite games, Prototype.
Okay, and let's compare that experience that you can get on the Steam Deck, that is fixable by workarounds by the way, to the experience you'd be getting on the Switch or Switch 2. Oh wait, you can't even boot the game on the Switch or the Switch 2?
About 5 hours into the game, it turns out the main Proton usually doesn't work with that title, but most people think that the game is playable because, well, they've only played about 2 hours of Prototype 1 and assume the game works.
Yeah, all those people out there saying that the game works, make sure to ignore them and only listen to me. But yeah, it might not work on the main Proton version, but it is so easy to just switch your Proton version and continue playing. Plus, this isn't even a Steam Deck verified game, so you should kind of come to expect these sort of things. If you don't want to end up running into these sort of scenarios, maybe play games that are verified to work perfectly on Steam Deck.
So do I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be better than the Steam Deck? Hell yeah, of course I do.
The only way the Switch 2 will be better than the Steam Deck is in terms of raw power. In terms of things the device can actually do, it is objectively worse than the Steam Deck in like every single way.
First of all, it's backed up by $1 billion company. And of course, Steam is also a big company.
So what was the point in bringing this up exactly?
And considering what they've done with the Steam Deck, it is incredibly impressive, but they don't have enough clout or power to pull companies to modify and optimize games specifically for the Steam Deck.
Yeah, that's just completely false, because a lot of developers will add a specific graphics option for Steam Deck users that runs very well for Steam Deck users.
Similar to how Nintendo does with the Nintendo Switch 2. Of course, it does take more time, but every game that is optimized for Nintendo, either Nintendo Switch 1 or 2, is going to play by definition perfectly.
Yup, you heard it here first. Apparently Tears of the Kingdom dropping to 19 FPS when you use your ability, that's actually the game running perfectly. What, you don't like your games running like stop motion? That's clearly the intended experience. And don't even get me started on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That is the best running game of all time.
And I've always been optimistic about the Nintendo Switch 2's hardware. I'm hearing that it's more powerful than the Steam Deck, and there's no doubt about that.
I mean, I will give the Switch 2 a little bit of credit. It is stronger than the Steam Deck when it comes to raw performance, but let's say they lock the game to 30 FPS for a certain game so they can focus on visuals. At least with a Steam Deck, you'd be able to change the graphics settings if you prefer a higher frame rate, whereas on the Switch 2 you're stuck with the 30 FPS. But I mean, is it really a shock to anyone that a handheld released in 2024 will be stronger than a handheld from like 2021 or 2022? This should be a given.
And as most people saw, Street Fighter 6 plays almost as good as the PlayStation 5 version, which is very hard to believe.
I mean, not really. Fighting games are super easy to run and aren't demanding in the slightest for the most part.
But seeing a lot of the screenshots, Street Fighter 6 on Nintendo Switch 2 does look a lot better than it does on the PlayStation 4, and it's very close to the PlayStation 5 version, with a few effects missing here and there.
Bro, if it looked as good, you wouldn't have had to brought up the fact that there's effects missing. What is this video? Yeah, it looks just as good as the PlayStation version, but just make sure you ignore those pesky missing effects. Effects that, by the way, make the game look better.
And I can't get anything even close to that on the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck version does play almost perfect, but it has a lot of stuttering within the game world, and it doesn't look good at all. If anything, it looks worse than the PlayStation 4 version, but plays just as good.
I mean, yeah, 720p handheld probably isn't going to have a game look as good as a 1080p console. That shouldn't be a shock to anybody.
So I guess if there's any point to this video, it's would I recommend a Steam Deck over the Nintendo Switch 2? Of course not. Honestly, first time playing a game on the Steam Deck takes around 8 minutes just to figure out exactly how to start the thing up with all the redistributables installing without any kind of progress bar on the screen. It just tells you to wait a minute, but it takes like 5 minutes to start up a game, and then you have to go through the graphic settings. It's not easy.
Yeah, that's just a complete lie. When I first got my Steam Deck and signed into my account, I got into Dark Souls 2 after downloading the game, of course, in less than a minute. And you bring up changing graphic settings as if that's a bad thing. At least you have the option to change graphic settings. Let's say a game on the Steam Deck and the Switch 2 are both averaging 45 FPS. Hypothetically. On the Switch 2, you're stuck with 45 FPS. On the Steam Deck, you can lower certain settings to get up to 60.
If anything, it is a little cumbersome and daunting to start a game for the first time on the Steam Deck, but usually the default settings on something like SteamOS does work with the hardware that you're using, even if you're using something like an ROG Ally or Legion Go with SteamOS. It automatically reads what kind of hardware you have and sets the game's preset to that specific hardware. So it is easy just to start up the game, but it takes a while and it is a bit concerning the first time you start up any game. And certain games, specifically like Street Fighter 6, require an internet connection whenever you haven't played the game for long enough. So say it's only been about 4 days since you went online to play Street Fighter 6 and you just want to play an offline match with your friend on your couch. The game is going to require an internet connection regardless if you're outside or not. So you most likely have to connect to some kind of mobile hotspot on your phone.
Yeah, but this is not the fault of Steam itself, this is a fault of Denuvo. Which, you know, no surprise, a Capcom game has Denuvo. Water is wet, grass is green, the sky is blue, and the floor is made out of floor. I mean, Capcom is so stingy with Denuvo that they will put that shit on a 23-year-old upscaling of a PS2 game.
But yeah, there are certain advantages to playing on the Nintendo Switch 2 versus the Steam Deck, and the number one thing is the convenience. You can't beat the Nintendo Switch's convenience, and the fact that you can play portable mode and docked mode within a few seconds, while the Steam Deck might have resolution issues.
Yeah, the reason you might have a resolution issue is because you can actually choose which resolution you want while playing in docked mode and handheld mode, whereas on the Switch you only get the option for one resolution in both handheld and docked mode. Plus, dude, it literally takes like 30 seconds to go change your resolution if you don't like your resolution when you boot a game.
While playing in docked mode, sometimes the dock that you're using isn't that fully compatible with your Steam Deck.
Yeah, that's probably why you buy the official Steam Deck dock from Valve. I bought that one for around $100, which is a bit pricey, I can't lie. But I've had no issues with it.
Maybe you have to adjust where the sound is coming from, then you have to rearrange your controllers. A lot of things on the Steam Deck are manual, so there is that.
That usually stems from the fact that things are more customizable. If you want a more streamlined experience, the Switch might be more for you, I can't lie. But if you want to be able to control everything, you definitely want to go with the Steam Deck.
It is the more modular version of something like a Nintendo Switch, but the Nintendo Switch is pretty much a handheld console hybrid for dummies. It's seamless and a perfect experience all around.
There is no way you can look at games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and say that those are perfect experiences. They are objectively not. I mean, are you seriously trying to argue a game that can't even hold 30 FPS in an industry where 60 is the standard is a perfect experience? Come on, man. Anyway, he goes on to do his outro here, so we won't go over that, but I hope you guys did enjoy this video. It's been a while since I made one, and it's definitely nice to be back. If you did enjoy the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike and a mean comment, and yeah, I'm out.